and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. Happy New Year to you all. It feels like, despite us only really recording just over a week ago, that it's been months, to be honest. We've got past that strange period where you don't know what day of the week it is during Christmas, but now everyone's sort of just about back into the routines and just about realising that it is Monday today. So at least we've got that in order. Nathan, obviously, Happy New Year to you. I have spoken to you since New Year, so it's pointless me saying how was your New Year and all of that. We've got an awful lot to get into, really. So I think what's going to be best is we go chronologically, as we would usually do, and just try and let's get chatting, because we've got a few topics to discuss and some quite interesting ones as well. So, as I said, going back what feels like over a month now, even though it's not at all. Coventry visited the Riverside on New Year's Day. As I mentioned, it's not a rivalry, it's not a derby, but certain social media accounts would have you believe it's the fiercest thing since sort of Lazio versus Roma or one of the Turkish derbies. Of course, it's not. But regardless, it was built up in a way where everyone was probably a little bit more desperate to win than usual. And of course, in typical Boro fashion on New Year's Day, and we have a terrible record on New Year's Day, it didn't go planned, did it?
No, it didn't, and it was a little bit of a strange one. I think going into playing Coventry off the back of Huddersfield and winning, and in the fashion that we did there, I hope that would give us a little bit of confidence going into this game, and hopefully sort of override the feeling of tiredness in the players that was probably definitely going to be there, having played so many games in a matter of days, and with the inability to rotate the squad that we had at that current time. But yeah, same sort of theme again with the team. Of course, Silvera left to go to the Asia Cup, as well as McGree, so those two missed out of the squad. And you looked at the bench, and it was literally just the under-23s side, plus Alex Gilbert and I think it was Bangura on the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, Coburn started in Silvera's place. But yeah, a strange sort of feeling going into the game of I wasn't feeling confident. Met up with our friend Alex before the game. They'd won a few games but drawn the game prior to that game on New Year's Day with Swansea a couple of days prior, and conceded in the last minute as well. And he was not very confident as well, which was a little bit strange, I thought, considering our threadbare squad and sort of our form over the past month. But yeah, it was always going to be a difficult game. But the first half was very, very, very one-sided in favour of Middlesbrough, and I don't know how we went into the break level, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it felt very much a copy and paste of the first half from Hull. Obviously, another game that we ended up losing, but the game should have been dead and buried. And this was before Coventry even equalised, just before half time. We had countless chances. We got ourselves into the lead, and you just felt that if we could just get another, and it's not very often that we would score two before half time, but we did have the chances. And again, it wasn't a case of half chances or you look back and you think, oh, you should have maybe done better. There's some real glorious ones in there, isn't there? I mean, Jones early on rounds Collins, and yes, okay, he's very wide, but he manages to sort of just about get his shot on target. And I think it's Bobby Thomas that gets back and hooks it off the line. Rogers went close. We hit the post. Yeah, there was just so many times where it just seemed like I don't want to speak too soon. Well, at least when I felt like this in the ground, I don't want to speak too soon, but it's starting to feel a little bit like Hull, and we all know what happened in that game. Of course, we did take the lead, and something that pleased me from the aspect of this goal was we often talk at half time at the match and say, don't get me wrong, we completely understand the way we play. We often work it left to right and vice versa and back and forth, and sometimes maybe overplay it a little bit. And at times you get into a position on the right or the left, and you think, we have got Josh Coburn in the box. Why not put a delivery in? It's all right to change it up. We're not just, spamming balls into the box, and we haven't really got any presence in there. And we never really tend to do it, to be honest. We always work it back and then go across, and it just sort of normally fizzles out, really. A lot of the time it happens. And in this certain instance, Isaiah Jones actually gets his head up, picks a cross out, and a great header from Josh Coburn that gives us the lead. And it was just nice to see a little bit of a change up, because as I say, the amount of attacks where, yes, I'm sure, those times where you don't realise that we've retained possession and it goes back and forth and we keep it and we keep it and we keep it, and it feels like minutes after we get a chance from it. It's all one move, but sometimes you just think, if you can just change it up and put it in the box and just cause the defenders to have to think a little bit, sometimes it might work in our favour. In this instance, as I say, Coburn's in the right area, and it's a really good header, I think.
Yeah, it was right in that corner. And it's a bit of an interesting one with Coburn, really, because he came off the bench at Huddersfield and scored with his first and only chance of the game. And we've spoken about the first half of Coventry and the amount of chances that we had, but Coburn didn't have any other ones apart from the one that he puts in the bottom corner with his head. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say by any means that he's the most prolific striker in the world, but since he's come back into the side, he's certainly made the most of his chances so far, which is good to see. But yeah, good ball from Jones for the goal as well, and yeah, obviously we had a few chances, as you mentioned. Some other ones, I think, that were sort of the back end of the first half, were Greenwood having a shot that was tipped over by Collins, and Engel had one as well. But look, the lead only lasted 3 minutes. Coventry put the ball in the box. It's headed on. Glover makes a terrific save to sort of palm it away. And yeah, we concede a lot of goals from set pieces, unfortunately. And as it's cleared away, it comes to the edge of the box, and Sakamoto's in ridiculous form for Coventry, and it's a really good finish through a crowd of bodies to just put it in the bottom corner and get them back on terms, when really they hadn't even entered our half hardly in that first half. So yeah, one of them unfortunate ones in terms of, we had a plethora of chances in that first half. They have one, take it, and it sort of
Took the life
it's
out of us, really, going into the
yeah,
second half.
yeah, it does. You sort of wonder if the players maybe feel hard done by, that you batter Coventry for pretty much the full half, and you don't find yourselves going in front at the break. I think if you do find yourselves 1-0 up, then you perhaps see them possibly open up a little bit more in that second half, and we could possibly exploit them on the counter a little bit more often. But with the game level, both sides were sort of going at each other evenly, and yeah, they took their chances, and we just completely ran out of steam for the second half, really.
Yeah, we did. It was, if ever the phrase chalk and cheese was relevant, it definitely was in this game. And yeah, I don't know if it was a case of we just sort of ran out of steam, as you say, or that goal right on half time after such a convincing half just absolutely sucked the life out of the team. I really don't know, but it was clear to see in the second half that they probably got a bit of a rollicking off Mark Robins because by their standards, they weren't at it at all. But they certainly rather come out in the second half and were more on it. I don't think it would have taken much for them to be more on it than their first half performance, but, fair play to them. They did. And I think it's important to give them credit because they did improve, but also we made it very easy for even a minor sort of improvement from their side to be able to make all the difference because we just didn't lay a glove on them second half. I can't even remember us having a chance in the second half, if I'm honest. And Coventry, it was all Coventry, wasn't it, that second half? They obviously get into the lead. A shot, a cross comes in. Sims gets in front of Dale Fry, gets a shot off. Glover makes an okay save, and then he sort of wrestles with Fry a bit and manages to poke it towards the back post. I think it's going to go in anyway, but Haji Wright is there at the back stick just to tap it in and obviously send the away fans into absolute raptures, which I'm sure they were delighted with. And then as soon as they got into the lead, really, you're sort of hoping that, a New Year's Day crowd can lift the team. And it's on the team as well to be able to sort of get the crowd on their side, get them going through creating chances and running and tackling and really showing that they have the intensity that they want from the crowd. But actually, it sort of just didn't really come from either. And there's, no complaints can be made about the atmosphere when the team performs like that because really there's nothing to cheer or sing about, to be honest. And yeah, after they were in the lead, of course, they then add another through Sakamoto, and it's a well-worked goal again, in fairness. Bidwell gets down the line, clips it towards the back post, and he's just there. And Alex, who you mentioned, told me before the game, standing at the Ayrton Gate, he said, he's a real player. I can't wait for you to see him today. I think his words were something like, obviously jokingly, he said, as long as you come away from the game and say that he's had a good game, I'm not really bothered about the scoreline. Well, Alex, if you're listening, you got the scoreline and you got the approval of Sakamoto because he ran riot at times in that second half. And got to give them credit again, a great bit of recruitment. I know they spent quite an awful lot of money by championship standards on Sims and Haji Wright, but I think Sakamoto was only about £1 million from a Belgian team that had been relegated or something like that. And it just goes to show you can't find these gems because he certainly is a gem. And yeah, that was really the story of Coventry, a tale of two halves, more than any game I can think of really since Hull. And probably on the balance of things, you could say Coventry were deserved winners, but it's all our own fault because if you put even 2 of the 8 or 9 clear-cut chances that you have, then it's a complete different story, isn't it? You probably knock the stuffing out of them and they think, well, we've got an even bigger mountain to climb, but we weren't able to do that. And they capitalised. So, yeah, the wait to beat a Coventry team goes on. It feels like now it'll never, ever happen again, to be honest. Carrick's record against Mark Robins continues to worsen. We can only dream, really, and let's just hope if we do put some runs together, the pair of us, that it doesn't end in another playoff semi-final, because I don't think I could handle that, really. Yeah, I mean, there's not an awful lot more to be said about the Coventry game. As I say, it feels like a while ago. We've moved on since then. And I think what was important, obviously going into January, that regardless of the Coventry result, we started quickly and were out the traps in the transfer window. And I guess somewhat of a sort of surprise signing almost developed within the space of 24 hours last week. We'd spoken an awful lot about earlier on this season that we needed extra firepower in the forward line and a real natural number 10. And I think everyone really was sort of more concerned about strengthening the defence and adding a natural number 9. And I always felt that we needed a few more goals from the 3 and behind the striker. And in fairness, the recruitment team obviously agree, because Middlesbrough have been quick to add Finn Azaz to their attacking options. Of course, someone that scored against us earlier on in the season for Plymouth, been in excellent form so far. Of course, not Plymouth's player, but was on loan at Aston Villa. That loan was cut short. We've paid a fee believed to be in the region of about £2 to £2.5 million. And he's our new number 20, Nathan. Obviously, a lot of excitement about this signing. Very frustrating the fact that he couldn't play in the Villa game, and he's also cup-tied for the Chelsea semi-final. But, as we say, a really good addition, quick out the traps from Middlesbrough. An awful lot of credit's got to go to the recruitment team, and a signing where really you think, if we can build on that, I think that'll be a good signing, not just for now, but also for the years to come, really.
Yeah, it was a really weird one, wasn't it? Obviously, the New Year's Day games happened, and he played for Plymouth against Watford on that day, scored for Plymouth, and it was an absolute
An absolute,
corker as well.
yeah.
It was an absolute worldie. A volley with the inside of his foot that he just sort of cushioned in that far corner. And I think you sent me it with the caption, something along the lines of signing Boro or something like that. And within 24 hours, we were linked with him, and you sort of saw the link and thought, oh well, like that's slightly interesting. But then it sort of creeps further and further forward into, oh well, bids being placed. Middlesbrough are in the lead to sign him. He's on his way to Rockcliffe for a medical. So yeah, it was a strange one how quick it moved. What was also very interesting was that when the rumor first sort of came about, me and you were speaking, and you thought that we'd probably only be able to sort a loan deal for him. But strangely enough, I was looking at it from a perspective of Aston Villa, and I thought, well, he's 23, which he's not in that sort of Aaron Ramsey category of a young 20 odd year old player. He's sort of beyond being classed as a very young player now. And strangely enough, I just think that it's a good piece of deal for both parties, really, because realistically, he's probably never going to get in at Aston Villa at this moment in time. They have better players that are younger than him, and players that have got a number of games at the highest level under the belts. So to be able to pick him up for £2.5 million, cracking bit of business, to get him tied down to a deal for 4.5 years, perfect. Let's see what he's all about at Millwall in a week's time. It is a bit of a shame that we can't see him in the cup games. It is typical as well, really, that still with the injuries, okay, we've had a few players back against Villa, but with the injuries and stuff, you'd ideally want to sign a player that is available to play in every game, but that's not the case. But yeah, Azaz is certainly one for the future, and he's a goal scoring and creative number 10, which is exactly what we needed. Probably a little bit different to Matt Crooks, probably a little bit easier on the eye as well. Hopefully he has the same knack of scoring goals, and hopefully he can create a couple more for us as well. I was totally in agreement with you that we needed probably another body in that attacking three behind the striker that could contribute going forward, and we've got that now. And it's a player that is once again signed on a permanent deal, which is really important for the football club.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, just saying that now about permanent signings. Today, there's obviously news that Fabio Carvalho looks like he's going to be heading to Hull on loan. And you look at that signing and you do think, look, I'm sure it is and will prove to be a great signing. You know, he's a calibre of player which pretty much everyone in the Championship wouldn't mind having. And for Hull to get him over the line for the short term, great. I'm sure he'll have an impact and he'll probably push them on and keep their sort of trajectory towards the playoffs ongoing, really, and perhaps even give them a bit of a boost. But then you look at Finn Azaz, who this season is already, I think he's currently on 5 goals and 3 assists for Plymouth from the 10 position. He's right up there in every sort of stat about chance creation. I think only Dewsbury Hall really is anywhere closer. Or rather, is the leader in them departments. And to bring in a player like that, as you say, a more natural number 10, someone that's going to be easier on the eye to watch, thread passes, take players on, just all round add to our attacking abilities. Because really, chance creation hasn't sort of been our problem. It's been putting the ball in the back of the net. But sometimes when, a few Middlesbrough fans have commented on Matt Crooks and his sort of ability to unlock a game through a pass or beat a few players and be a little bit more sort of unpredictable and a little bit more of a maverick, I guess you could call him that. I think that's probably more what you're getting from Finn Azaz. And don't get me wrong, we're both massive fans of Matt Crooks. He's a very valuable member of the squad, but I think we have been sort of crying out for that natural number 10. And not that I'm comparing the two, but I think the last natural number 10 we probably had was Gaston Ramirez, really. Someone that you could say that is his position. Even Crooks, really, still, I'm not quite sure if he's more of a attacking number 8 as opposed to a 10. And he's certainly not a striker, but he's done an okay job. Obviously, we've seen Rodgers there. But I think in the end, we'll see the likes of Rodgers, Azaz, who's comfortable off the left as well. All very interchangeable and all, as I said, really an exciting prospect because he's also, funnily enough, seemingly very good friends with Morgan Rodgers from their time at West Brom. So hopefully they can get that connection up and running really quickly as soon as he's allowed to play, which is Millwall, of course, despite those really annoying cup games being in the way. So there's obviously that. In terms of the transfer front, there hasn't been an awful lot more concrete links. I guess the main one has probably been Luke Ayling. Obviously, we all know who Luke Ayling is by now, getting on a little bit, but over the years has been a really solid player in this division and even in the Premier League at times for Leeds. And with our problems at right back, Dijksteel, again, having a few injury problems, it's just a continuous problem with Dijksteel, it feels. And he plays a handful of games and then picks up another knock. And we don't really have too much of a time frame on that from Michael Carrick. Obviously, Vandenberg fills in there, but I think it's clear to see now that if possible, he has to play a centre half, really. He's so much more effective and he gives us an awful lot more just in terms of coming out with the ball at centre half and just feeling more comfortable, really, in central areas as opposed to wide areas. So I actually think, despite some of the comments that I've seen, which are very, very uncertain about this, a lot of comments about him being too old, about him being past it, I actually think there's a bit of a stopgap signing. And I know it goes against a little bit what we've done, but Carrick said that I think, sometimes, although you might have one way of doing things and you want to bring in, younger players with sell-on value and things like that, at the moment, I think we could do with a character like Luke Ayling. We've spoken about the loss of Tommy Smith and Daryl Lenihan, 2 natural leaders. And I think just not only in terms of filling in a position at right back, but also just that experience and that know-how, it might actually be a good stopgap just until the end of the season to sort of firm up the back four and just give us a little bit of an added leadership and added, as I say, experience and someone that is just a natural right back as opposed to having Vandenberg out there and looking a little bit uncomfortable at times.
Yeah, I think it's possibly an interesting signing if we do sort of get it over the line. Of course, we sort of seen yesterday. He played for Leeds at Peterborough in the FA Cup and was was giving it the badge patting and a little bit of emotion following full time. So it looks like he is on his way out the door of Leeds. But just as a player, he's had experience playing in the Premier League for Leeds regularly as well, under Bielsa and then Jesse March as well. Obviously, mainly known for his time in the Championship with Leeds, uh, was really important in getting them promoted. Um, that Bielsa ball, the murder ball type thing, um, that was going on there. But yeah, now as you mentioned, getting on a bit would hopefully give us some experience. Obviously, just look at our sort of squad and you see the youthfulness throughout it. Having the some experience in that back four would be probably would be invaluable in the running. Really. Um, Obviously we had Tommy Smith doing that role um earlier on in the season and last season as well, sort of tucking in and being a third centre half. And Earling could do that job as well. He can fill in a centre at centre half, even in a four. So yeah, in that sort of instance, it sort of kills two birds with one stone, really. Because I think a lot of fans are looking on. Well, you sort of see the opinions on Twitter, and they believe that we need some cover at centre half as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this one does get over the line. But as yet, we sort of heard the initial rumor and haven't heard a whole lot since. Really, I think it'll probably depend on what Leeds do. I think they've been linked to Connor Roberts from Burnley and getting him in on loan until the end of the season as well. So I think they'll be looking to cover themselves first before letting Ayling leave. But seeing him uh, sort of given the reception he was given yesterday, perhaps they think that could be close. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But again, if we get him over the line, he's another player that can't play in the cup games against Chelsea. So yeah, not ideal on that front.
No, no. And I think at this stage of the season, it is going to be fairly unlikely. But unless we're buying from abroad, which we might, but there hasn't really been too many sort of murmurings of that kind of business going on in January. Obviously, sticking on the topic of Leeds, delighted to see that Jed Spencer's loan spell went really well. And he's been shipped straight back off to Tottenham, where he's been put on the transfer list. So, yeah, Jed, all the best. I know you're a millionaire and you probably don't care, but it's good to see that your football career is going as solid as that's what I'm sure you hoped it would, given the size of your ego and everything else that you seem to carry along with you as a footballer. Um, Obviously, we don't want to spend too long on that topic. I think on transfer news, obviously, as you say, it is interesting that Ayling's a target because he is comfortable playing naturally at right back, but also filling in sometimes with the back five. And for me, that makes far more sense than bringing in a centre half. I know there's been the links with Charlie Creswell from Leeds, who seems to be a bit of a long-term target now. And the only way for me that would make sense is if Paddy McNair goes. And at the moment, it seems as though Paddy McNair is just still suffering his back injury. And I think he did have a little bit of a setback as well. But yes, okay, he's out of contract. But for the remainder of the season, if he goes in the summer, fair enough. But for the remainder of the season, if he's going to be okay and he still wants to play out and hopefully earn himself another new deal here, I don't think we really need another centre half if that's going to be the case. And he is going to be back soonish and willing to play. So, yeah, I would quite like to see Luke Ayling happen. I know some people are very hesitant to sort of want that to go through, but I think a little bit of experience might be invaluable, as you say, really. And hopefully that one can move quickly because the sooner the better with January. It's always the case. I know Michael Carrick at times is a little bit sort of hesitant to put his new signings in quickly. We saw it with Cameron Archer last season. But the quicker we've got these players, the quicker they can be bedded in and the quicker we can sort of move on, as well as getting back some of our injured players, which obviously we'll talk about going into the Villa game. And yeah, we can start to put that momentum together that we're all hoping we can do with a more bulked out squad, which I mean hasn't been the case for months now. But finally, Nathan, moving on towards Villa, we're actually getting somewhere with these injuries. It feels like I spoke about a lifetime ago since the Coventry game. I mean, it's decades ago since we've had an actual nearly fully fit squad to pick from. Of course, I'm alluding to the fact that Hayden Hackney, Emmanuel Latilaf, and Matt Crooks were all available for their Aston Villa Cup tie at home. For me, regardless of the result going into the game, it felt like a win just seeing some of those names back on the team sheet when it got announced an hour before kickoff.
Yeah, we had options, Dawn. It was really pleasing to see those three players back. Um, Obviously, Hackney's been a lot further away than the other two. The other two both got injured in that Port Vale win. Um, Whereas Hackney hasn't been seen since Bristol City away, which literally was a lifetime ago.
Yeah,
The first game back after the last international break. So, yeah, a very long time ago. And we were sort of teased with his return, um, and then had that stripped away from us, and just had to plod on. Um, but look, he's back now. Thank God for that, really, because I don't think there's really any argument to be made. He's our best player. There's just no other way of saying it. He's completely and utterly top class. And look, he showed that on Saturday night, which we'll get into. But yeah, came in and captained the side. Interesting move, but with Johnny Howson dropped to the bench and finally given a rest after just being pretty much the only player not to have a niggle in the last.
the oldest player in the squad and not
Yeah,
to be. It's pretty ironic, isn't it?
yeah, it's a real strange one, but there you go. Deserves that rest of Johnny Howson. Um, but yeah, having Lath as an option, really good to see. Having Matt Crooks as an option, really good to see. Even though he didn't start the game or get on, but yeah, an interesting team selection on Saturday night. Obviously, you looked at it and saw two left backs in Bangura and Engel, and seeing Jones there, Greenwood, Rogers. You kind of thought, well, what's he going to do here? And me and you were debating it, and we sort of initially you sort of think, oh, well, one of the left fullbacks will just play right fullback, but I kind of thought that he would do what he did, which was Bangura a little bit further forward, playing off that left side. Um, and I thought he'd drop Jones into right back. But what I didn't foresee was the sort of 3-4-2-1, if you want to call it that, um, with Coburn leading the line, Rogers and Greenwood slightly behind him, Bangura and Jones on either sort of wing, covering Aston Villa's width, and then Engel sort of dropping in and supporting off that left side. I thought that was very interesting. Whether that's just because we were trying to combat Aston Villa's shape, I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see when we go into Chelsea on Tuesday. But I thought it was very interesting. And I mean, I'm not going to say for the most part, I'm just going to say it worked because we limited Villa really to not so many clear cut chances. The big chances that they had were from set pieces. But yeah, was really pleased to see these players back involved with the side, and hopefully, as Carrick said after the Coventry game, when sort of saying that these players are on the way back, that hopefully now we can start looking forward at players coming back rather than how long players are going to keep being out for. Yeah, 3 players back all at once was a big bonus.
Yeah, and I think there was 2 real standout themes from this game. And obviously, as you say, it was the tweak in tactics and formation throughout the game, really, from Carrick. We were sort of adaptable, really, throughout the game. We changed shape at times when substitutions come on. But I think, as you say, it was more, I think, the main sort of tactical setup throughout the game was that. I mean, at times it looked like Bangura was just playing more as a advanced sort of fullback, but I guess it was a 3/5/ sort of Bangura had a little bit more license, but I guess it looked more of a 5 to me, which I'm absolutely fine with. And I think one criticism that's been thrown at Michael Carrick throughout his time at Middlesbrough is he's perhaps not too adaptable. And sometimes he sort of goes with what he knows. And a lot of the time that has been the right thing to do. But sometimes in certain situations, he hasn't adapted and he hasn't proved to be too flexible. And this game for me, regardless of the result, I was just really pleased to see that flexibility. And it just goes to show that we are capable of it. Carrick's capable of it. And we aren't just sort of set in a way where the players that we have can only do these roles. We've seen now that Bangura and Engel actually had a really sort of nice link up and understanding down that left throughout Saturday evening. I thought 2 real standouts. I think Bangura got BBCT's man of the match. And even Jones, I guess, sort of going more back to a position that he played under Chris Wilder, where he got all his plaudits and really burst onto the scene, to be honest. I actually think he looks a lot more comfortable there. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the formation going forward. It won't be. Carrick will probably go back to his tested 4. But it does give us another option now. And at least you now know that games where we might be a little bit under the cosh, you think of Leicester. I know they're a championship side, but when you go away to Leicester, you're going to have to stay in the game. And that gives us an option to be a bit more resolute, counter-attack, get a few more sort of defensive-minded bodies in the team and work from that, and obviously have to almost leave the likes of Greenwood and Rodgers in those 2 sort of floating roles behind Coburn with a little bit more freedom to do what they like and try and punish the team that we're playing against on the break through attacking situations. And that was one theme that I was really happy with. I think the other theme is Tom Glover, because we were all really, really worried when Senny did. We all knew it was coming, but it eventually hit us. And obviously, just before he was actually due to go to the Africa Cup of Nations, Senny Dieng picked up a slight knock. So we got Tom Glover in the team slightly earlier than anticipated. But my goodness, he's made an immediate impact. And already you're seeing the conversation on Twitter that, you know, he's playing to a level, and he played especially against Villa. He pulled off some incredible saves. The one from John McGinn on the edge of the box that he tips over the bar is phenomenal. And you're already seeing people say, you know, Dieng, as fantastic as he was, and yes, he's a lot more comfortable with the ball at his feet. You know what Carrick's like? It's harder to get out of his team than what it's to get into his team. And if Glover continues to perform and do the job that he's doing, prevent, you know, oppositions from scoring with these terrific saves, it's gonna be difficult for Senny Dieng to get back in the team. And I might be wrong with that. Michael Carrick may go against what we've seen of him in the past. He might just throw Dieng back in because of his ability with distribution and the ball at his feet and that kind of aspect of our goalkeeper in the system that we play. But given that we last night saw sort of rumblings that Senny Dieng may well be withdrawing from the Senegal squad and coming back earlier, yes, he's probably going to be injured for a couple more weeks, you'd expect, if he's going to withdraw completely from that squad. But, it's definitely a discussion to have because Glover, despite some early concerns this season with a few sort of goals that we conceded in the Carabao Cup, he's looked just as solid as Seny Dieng. And yeah, I've been really impressed with him, I must say.
Yeah, he's had well, Saturday was his best game, I think, in terms of the sheer volume of shots that he faced and dealt with. Um, of course, we mentioned earlier on he made that really good save in the build up to Coventry's first goal. Um, he has made other good saves in other games for us. Um, but yeah, it will be interesting to see what Carrick does when Dieng is back and back fit. But I don't, as much as I want to give Glover loads and loads of credit for his performance on Saturday night, which I thought he was probably one of our men of the match, really, for the amount that he did. He kept us in the game to, well, as late as we possibly could get to. Um, I don't necessarily want to jinx this form going into the next month. So yeah, I always feel slightly hesitant to praise my goalkeeper because obviously 1 minute you can be on top of the world and the next minute you can just drop a clanger and then it's all forgotten about.
Yeah,
So
it is
yeah,
a small sample size in terms of his performances of late because a lot of people, let's be honest, weren't overly convinced in the early rounds of the Carabao Cup. And that was fair. But since he's come back into the team, he hasn't really put a foot wrong. And
no,
I'll say, just because you're too scared to ahead of the next few games. But yeah, he hasn't put a foot wrong. And I think another interesting line, of course, on the goalkeeper situation is the fact that this morning we've seen that actually it wasn't a case of Tom Glover not being selected for Australia. It was more of a case of a sort of joint decision between him and the Australia manager that actually what was going to be best for him is basically for him to get a run of games. They knew the Dieng situation. They knew that Tom Glover wasn't going to be number one for Australia. So for his career, and I think Glover himself said it, it's been an opportunity for me. And as a second choice goalkeeper, I guess you've got to bide your time and just hope for that opportunity. And he's finally got it. And at the moment, you couldn't really complain at all. And it is an interesting situation because although we paid a fee for Dieng and he's been the undisputed number one, I can't really remember a time where a goalkeeper's come in and been so good that there's sort of been a conversation around that. I know Liam Roberts come in for a few games last season, but given the amount of money that we were probably paying Zach Steffen, I think it was just obvious that he was always going to come back into the team. But this one's, I don't know. I think just with the way Carrick operates, I may be wrong, but as we've said and we've seen countless times, if you give enough and show Carrick that what you can offer, he is very, very generous with how many games you'll get, especially, well, obviously outfield players we've seen this from, but it is a case of you wouldn't be so sure that Carrick would just throw Dieng back in when he's available again.
yeah, it's an interesting one that we're actually talking about our goalkeepers being good for once because usually we're debating about which Poppadom wrists to put in goal.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it is nice. Just completely off topic, but just remembering a conversation that we had on this podcast a few years ago, which was possibly throwing Sol Bryn in away at Bournemouth when he hadn't
yeah,
played for any club, I don't think. And we had both Luke Daniels and Joe Lumley available. Um, Genuinely, dear me. But here we are now. Tom Glover's in goal for us. probably man of the match on Saturday night. Made a lot of very good saves, and yeah, we're talking about Seni Dieng as well, possibly coming back in. Hopefully, about a month's time. Really, I'd sort of anticipate that if he's going to withdraw from the Senegal squad, then he's probably going to be out for at least 3 weeks. Um, so yeah, it is an interesting one, but yeah, long may Glover's form continue because he kept us in the game as long as he possibly could on Saturday night. And look, the not just him, but the whole team did well in limiting Villa to a few chances that okay, Glover had to make some good saves for. Um, in the first half, efforts from Duran. Um, in the second half, obviously that McGinn one, that's your save that stands out because it's sort of your one for the cameras. Dives away to his right hand side and tips that one over the bar. We are lucky that Consa's header doesn't just go in that bottom corner. Um, and Moreno doesn't keep his shot down from a set piece. But we did well on the whole in the game. I thought, as mentioned, the system worked well to limit them, and you sort of having the conversation about Boro players being back from injury, and the ability to sort of change things up, like Lath coming on and things like that. And then you see Unai Emery make 4 changes at 70 minutes, which is Watkins, Diaby, Zaniolo, and Douglas Luiz. Is there any need? But there
Just
you go.
in fairness, it was more of a compliment, wasn't it? Because it just goes to show that they unload the whole cavalry and really go for it. Because yes, okay, they did have the Conza chance, which clips the post, and we are fortunate in that aspect. But even the Moreno chance, had he have stuck it in the back of the net, it would have been an incredible finish, and it wasn't sort of a clear one-on-one or anything like that. And I don't think we're also probably getting the credit that there was a few openings from our perspective. Jones a couple of times got in behind, and I think he tried to square one to Latilaf, perhaps should have shot. But it wasn't a sort of, yes, okay, they had the majority of the ball, but we weren't just, camped out on our box, just heading and kicking away crosses. And yeah, I was really, really, really pleased with the performance. In fact, I don't think I've ever come away from a defeat and been so pleased. And that was probably partially down to not really wanting a replay because of, we've already got a hellish fixture list of games to play coming up still. And it gave me confidence going into Chelsea. I'm not going to lie. Look, Chelsea, at the moment, it's strange because Villa are higher than Chelsea in the league. They've been way more impressive, but yet Chelsea is the game where I think, oh, well, it's Chelsea. So, it's been almost ingrained in our minds for so long that, well, it's Chelsea. So, they're going to be better than Villa. But that might not necessarily be the case. And yeah, it gave me confidence. It gave me confidence that we can shift a little bit tactically. Some of the individual performances that I just wanted to mention. Obviously, Glover was the standout, I guess. Dan Borlasa, I thought, had one of his better games. Really, really impressed me alongside Hackney. Hackney, again, considering he's been out for so long, yes, he only played 60 minutes, but he just looked at home against a team like that. He just looked ready right now to go and step into a Premier League midfield. And I guess that's the player that we're getting back and why we've been absolutely desperate for him for so long. And yeah, those were my sort of real standouts. And actually, just before I forget, I thought Matt Clark was really, really solid at the back. And I know we've said it, and I don't want to sort of spend too long on it because he's been back for a while now. But considering he was out for 14 months, again, a bit of a compliment. It just goes to show that we haven't missed Paddy McNair because Matt Clark has come back in and just fitted straight in. And we paid a decent fee for him under Chris Wilder. And I think everyone had forgotten that actually He was player of the season for West Brom, player of the season for Derby, player of the season for Portsmouth. Highly regarded as probably one of the centre halves in the Championship that you'd want in your team. And now, despite us not having him for so long, we've got him available, and he's putting up a really good case to be a starter at the moment. So, yeah, lots of positives to take, even though we were knocked out just on the goal. I mean, it's so fortunate, isn't it? From Villa's perspective, Cash hits it, Latilaf. You could say don't turn your back, but he tries to block it, takes a cruel nick, goes past Glover. These things happen. But yeah, overall, really pleasing for me.
Yeah, it's actually funny with the Cash goal. He's actually aiming for the other corner,
Yeah,
and it comes off Latilaf, and it. Do you want to know what? I think if it doesn't bend out and then back in again, I think Glover gets there because he is very very close on that replay covering that bottom corner. Um, but yeah, I think I know this is really really sort of strange to say, but I didn't care about getting beat on Saturday night. I was just sort of pleased to see us perform well, see us not take a beating against the side that are second in the Premier League. And look, we did well for the most part. Um, and yeah, we pushed them all the way. I think, as you mentioned, it was a compliment and a little bit of a feather in our caps that they had to bring on all their best players off the bench for 20 minutes. Although, I mean, by no means did Watkins and Diaby and Zaniolo change the game, but um, yeah, they're just fresh legs going forward can tire you out. But look, we've been beat by a team second in the Premier League by a shite deflection in the last minute. It is what it is, and yeah, was totally happy with the performance of the team, and I'm glad that the absolute majority on social media felt the same as well. That this was always going to be a difficult game, and yeah, okay, we were beaten on the night, but I'd rather have been beaten on the night than going to a replay and having to play at Villa Park where they haven't been beat at for nearly a year, and we'd probably have been beat there, wouldn't we? So yeah, um, it hopefully builds a lot of confidence going into the next week, and of course we're in league action next weekend, but the main one is on tomorrow night, which is Chelsea at the Riverside, and again, as you mentioned, uh, you look at sort of Villa and you think, well, they've been more impressive than Chelsea this season, and there's no denying that they have. And I haven't been overly impressed by Chelsea anytime I've seen them so far this season, apart from when they beat Newcastle on pens. Um, and yeah, I think the only thing is when I think of Chelsea, is I just think that when it comes to trophies, they, they don't mess about, do they? It's this
it's
this
almost
thing.
DNA now that they do, even when they aren't performing at the best, they win trophies.
Yeah, they are serial winners. I mean, I'm not being funny, but even the other year when they were somehow found the way, despite being in absolute disarray, sacking Lampard and bringing Tuchel in, they found themselves as Champions League winners at the end of the season.
Yeah,
It's just one of them things with Chelsea. But I think what does give me a little bit of sort of enthusiasm going into the game is obviously we played them a few years ago at the Riverside and they beat us in the FA Cup quarterfinals. And what I will say is that side that played us then was miles better than the side that we're going to be playing tomorrow night. In terms of just what they had, in terms of Obviously, Silva was a couple of years younger. They had Rudiger that night, Aspilicueta as well. I think players you could sort of toss a coin with. Mount and Palmer, very similar. Um, obviously,
To be fair,
obviously,
I've just laughed that off there, but actually, I'm thinking of Mason Mount now, and
yeah,
actually, Mason Mount back then was in a lot better form. So yeah,
yeah. I'm glad you've
kind
taken that.
yeah,
I'm
okay,
glad you've taken that back.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
fair enough.
Lukaku front that night scored against us. Um, but yeah, we'll be up against probably Broha tomorrow. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what Chelsea this time around bring. But there's no doubt about it. They've got it's different levels between us and them. I mean, look, the state of the midfield. They've got two players that they've bought for £100 million each playing in midfield. Just like if Hackney and Barlaser do anything against them, it's it'll be a real achievement. But yeah, it is just a funny one. We have done really well to get where we are now. Into the semi-finals, we've beaten everyone that we probably should have beaten.
Just in terms of obviously the atmosphere, the stadium, the first leg in general, it's a two-legged tie, of course. Tomorrow's our opportunity, really, isn't it? And yes, it's an absolute huge mountain to climb just to even score one goal against this Chelsea team. We're the complete underdogs in this situation. But if we are going to do the unthinkable and beat Chelsea, we've got to take something to Stamford Bridge. And of course, if we are to take something to Stamford Bridge, it'll be through tomorrow night's game. It looks on course to be a sellout. Of course, we've seen that Red Faction are planning on doing a whole tifo or sort of display across the South Stand, which of course they always smash it out of the park every time they do. And it's going to be one of those occasions where we've had a few over the years, the last couple of years, especially Coventry. The atmosphere was electric. Tottenham, the atmosphere was just incredible that night. The stadium felt at times like it was literally shaking. So hopefully we can create a similar atmosphere and cause an upset. But yeah, I think that is the case, Nathan, where, look, if it finishes 0-0 tomorrow night, I don't think anyone will be disappointed. But you'd kind of hope that tomorrow night we can. No, I don't expect us to win, but if we are to do anything, you'd expect the goal to come tomorrow night across two legs rather than going to Stamford Bridge and scoring.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting one. Um, just hope we stay in the game.
Yeah,
Really, um, I know it's sort of an interesting one to say, because we're the home side in this first leg, but you don't want to sort of go in and do what Preston did at the weekend. They went to Stamford Bridge, did really well for 60 minutes, like really well, kept it 0-0, and then one goes in and the floodgates open. That can't happen. It simply can't happen. Um, if it goes one, I know it's ideally not what you want, but if it goes one and you get beat 1-0, okay, fine. You've still got a chance, a small chance, but a chance nonetheless. But if it goes 2 or 3, the tie's done.
yeah.
Game dead.
Yeah.
Um,
If you
so
keep it to within one goal tomorrow, I think it's been a success for the first leg.
yeah,
Yeah, of course, that feels like sort of a separate story in itself, but we do, as you've mentioned earlier, have a league game on Saturday. Millwall away, historically one of those grounds, Nathan, you just don't want to go to it. And I don't even mean that as a Middlesbrough fan, you just don't want to go to the Den, full stop, really. We haven't got a great record there. Over the years, there's been some pretty pitiful performances. I know that last season's really sticks out, and you just, I think, quite frankly, just lost your marbles that day. I don't think you fully recovered from it, to be honest. Not a great day to be a Middlesbrough fan at all. But yeah, Millwall, despite beating us earlier on this season and on the opening day, I felt looked like a team prepared to go right in amongst it around the playoffs, similar to where they have been. They've really fallen well short of that, to be honest. And it's that for me has been one of the surprise stories of the season. The fact that they've just not fallen off a cliff, but I mean, compared to the team that we saw on the opening day of this season, I would not have expected them to be where they are right now.
No, I just recall talking about that first game of the season and sort of talking about each side's recruitment, and we said that Millwall had strengthened in areas where we sort of looked from the outside looking in, and you could see that they definitely needed a centre forward. They got Nisbet in, they got some fullbacks in Brian, and they at the time retained Fleming. And I wonder whether after his sort of links away in the summer and nothing materialising, whether that's made him possibly go off the boil a little bit. But yeah, really strange that this sort of happened. But you'd sort of seen at the back end of last season when they sort of threw the playoffs away, that the writing was beginning to be on the wall for Rowett. Few fans' patience were wearing thin with him, and he's gone now. They've replaced him with Joe Edwards, who was in the England setups, and I mean, they got off to a flyer, winning away at Wednesday 4-0, and I honestly I don't think I've heard much of Millwall since. So it's just sort of returned back to normality for them. But there's no way that I'm gonna get carried away by the fact that they aren't performing necessarily that well. I think that it's going to be a very difficult game going down there, as it always is, going to Den. Certainly think that we're going to be seeing Finn Azaz make his Middlesbrough debut on Saturday afternoon. And in all honesty, I can't wait for that. But yeah, it's been nice to have a break from the league this weekend, get some players back, get them bedded back into the side, and get some minutes in the legs. I thought it was very clever from Carrick to sort of give Hackney the minutes that he did on Saturday, and Lath as well in the second half, and just sort of being able to manage Coburn and Howson's minutes as well. Coburn coming back from injury, Howson playing all sorts of minutes. So that was good, keeping players fresh and ready and available for the rest of the month. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one, Millwall. But for the meantime, all focus is on Chelsea.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you know we've got a second leg at least. So regardless of what happens tomorrow night, unless it is pretty fatal and we lose 4 or 5 or 3 or 2, we have a second chance to put things right if tomorrow doesn't go a plan. I'm sure the atmosphere will be really good. I've said throughout the season I'm a Fairweather Cup fan, and I've got to this stage, and I'm not going to lie, I'm really excited about tomorrow night. I don't know why. Might just be Boro tinted glasses, but I've just got a little bit of a feeling about tomorrow night, and I'll probably prove to be really wrong in the end. But it's always nice to have that feeling going into a big game. But yes, we'll wait and see how tomorrow pans out. Obviously, we'll be back after the Millwall game and when it gets back to league action, and then we'll look ahead to that second leg and what follows as well. So, Nathan, as always, thank you ever so much for watching and listening. If you have done, if you've watched on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. on audio platforms, please leave us a review and subscribe to our audio feed. And yes, up the Boro, we might pull off a miracle or half a miracle tomorrow night. We'll wait and see. Let's hope we've got that to discuss in the next podcast, which will be back next week. Thanks again, and that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.